My stepfather was holding a notarized power of attorney with my forged signature on it, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. My mother was sitting beside him, her hands folded in her lap like a woman in church. My half-sister Brooke was already on the phone with a realtor, scheduling a walkthrough of the beachfront property she believed she'd just stolen from me. None of them noticed the tiny green light blinking on the smoke detector above the dining room table. It wasn't a smoke detector. It was a 4K camera with a live feed running straight to the county prosecutor's office. I poured myself another glass of water and waited for the sirens. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. 72 hours before my stepfather waved a forged document in my face, the biggest threat in my life was a expired carton of oat milk. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, a 2-bedroom unit with exposed brick walls and a view of the Potomac that I'd earned with 7 years of 14-hour days. I worked in cybersecurity for a defense contractor. My job was to find the holes in systems that people swore were bulletproof. I was very, very good at finding holes. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. Mother, not Mom. I stopped calling her Mom when I was 17. I let it ring 4 times, then picked up. Elena. Her voice was warm. Too warm. Catherine only used that voice when she needed something expensive. Sweetheart, I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy. Too busy for your own mother? She laughed. A tinkling sound designed to make me feel guilty. It used to work. Listen, honey, I'm calling about Grandma Vivian's estate. The lawyer says we need to have a formal family meeting to finalize the property transfer. You're the executor, so nothing moves without you. That part was true. Grandma Vivian had died 3 months earlier and left me as the sole executor of her estate, which included a 4-bedroom house on the Outer Banks worth about $1.2 million, a savings account with $340,000, and a storage unit in Norfolk filled with antique furniture. She'd left everything to me. Not to Catherine, not to Brooke. To me, the granddaughter who actually visited her, the one who drove 6 hours every Thanksgiving to sit on her porch and drink sweet tea while Catherine and Brooke posted Instagram photos from ski resorts they couldn't afford. The lawyer can send documents electronically, I said. I don't need to be there in person. Actually, you do. Catherine's voice shifted. The sweetness curdled into something harder. Mr. Langston says there are original documents that require wet signatures. Something about the deed transfer and the tax filings. He says if you don't appear in person by Friday, the probate court could freeze the entire estate for up to a year. I pulled up my laptop and searched for the probate statutes in North Carolina. She was half right. There were certain documents that required in-person signatures, but the timeline was exaggerated. Still, I'd been meaning to finalize the estate for weeks. The longer I waited, the more excuses Catherine would manufacture to delay, contest, and complicate. Where? I asked. Grandma's house. Friday at noon. Mr. Langston will be there. Richard and Brooke, too. We'll sign everything, settle the estate, and be done with it. Clean break. Clean break. Catherine had never made a clean break in her life. She made messes and then convinced other people to clean them up. But I was the executor. I had a legal obligation to finalize the estate. If I refused to show up, she could petition the court to have me removed and replaced with someone she could control. Fine, I said. Friday at noon. Wonderful. The warmth flooded back. And Elena, bring all the estate documents, the originals. Mr. Langston needs the full file. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. Then I opened my laptop and started doing what I do best. I started looking for the holes. It took me 40 minutes to find them. First, I called Mr. Langston's office. His secretary told me he had no appointments scheduled for Friday. He was attending a legal conference in Charlotte all week. Second, I pulled Catherine's credit card statements. Don't ask me how. Let's just say that when your mother uses your social security number to open a Capital One card when you're 14, you develop certain skills. She had a $400 charge from a place called Quick Sign Notary Services in Raleigh from 2 days ago. Third, I checked the county recorder's office online portal. Someone had submitted a preliminary filing for a transfer of deed on Grandma Vivian's Outer Banks property. The listed new owner wasn't me. It was Richard Hale, my stepfather. The filing was marked pending executor approval, and attached to it was a power of attorney document that I had never signed. They weren't inviting me to a family meeting. They were inviting me to a crime scene where I was the victim. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The Potomac was black and silver under the evening sky. My reflection stared back at me, and for a second, I didn't see a 31-year-old woman with a security clearance. I saw a 16-year-old girl standing in the fluorescent light of a Nordstrom security office. shaking, while two loss prevention officers stared at her like she was trash. I was 16. Brooke was 14. Catherine had taken us shopping for Brooke's homecoming dress. While Catherine was in the fitting room with Brooke, I wandered over to the jewelry counter to look at a pair of earrings for Grandma Vivian's birthday. I didn't touch anything. I didn't pick anything up. I was just looking. 20 minutes later, we were walking out of the store when a security guard stopped us. "Ma'am," he said, looking at Catherine, "we need to check your daughter's bags." Someone had stolen a $700 bracelet from the jewelry counter. They checked Brooke's purse first. Nothing. Then they checked mine. The bracelet was inside, tucked into the zippered pocket of my backpack. I had never seen it before in my life. I looked at Brooke. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Catherine. She was staring at me with an expression I will never forget. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't confusion. It was calculation. She was doing math in her head, figuring out which daughter was more expendable. "Elena," Catherine said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "How could you?" "I didn't," I whispered. "Mom, I didn't take it. I was just looking at earrings. I never even touched the bracelets." "It was in your bag, honey? Someone put it there." I looked at Brooke again. She was crying, but there was something wrong with her tears. They were too neat, too controlled. She was performing. The store pressed charges. Catherine hired a lawyer for Brooke's emotional trauma, but told me we couldn't afford one for my case. I took a plea deal: juvenile shoplifting, community service, a record that was supposed to be sealed but somehow showed up on every background check I ran for the next 5 years. I lost a summer internship at NASA because of it. I lost a scholarship to Georgia Tech. I spent my freshman year at community college while Brooke went to homecoming, prom, and eventually a private university in South Carolina, all funded by Richard's construction company money that somehow never extended to me. Years later, at Grandma Vivian's kitchen table, after 2 glasses of wine, Brooke admitted it. She said it like it was funny. "Oh my God, do you remember Nordstrom? I was so scared they were going to find it in my purse. Thank God I slipped it into your bag in time." She laughed. Catherine laughed too. Richard wasn't even listening. He was watching football. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I just filed it away in the part of my brain where I keep evidence. I blinked, and the memory dissolved. I was back in my apartment, the Potomac glittering outside. They had sacrificed me once to protect Brooke. They were about to do it again, this time for $1.2 million in real estate. But I wasn't the 16-year-old girl with the bracelet in her bag anymore. I was the woman who found a 0-day vulnerability in a Pentagon contractor's firewall. I knew how to set a trap. The next morning, I drove to the law office of Diana Chu. Diana was not a warm person. She was a probate attorney with the conversational warmth of a glacier and the legal instincts of a great white shark. I laid out everything on her desk: the fake meeting, the fraudulent filing, the forged power of attorney, the quick-sign notary charge. Diana studied the documents for 3 minutes without speaking. Then she looked up. "They forged your signature on a power of attorney and filed a fraudulent deed transfer. That's 2 felonies before lunch." She paused. "We could file a police report right now and have them arrested by dinner." "I don't want them arrested by dinner," I said. "I want them arrested on camera, in Grandma's house, while they're trying to get me to sign the real documents. I want their faces. I want their words. I want everything." Diana tilted her head. "You want to catch them in the act. I want them to think they've won. I want them to feel the money in their hands. And then I want to take it away." Diana smiled. It was not a comforting smile. North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recording. As long as you're present and consenting, you can record any conversation you're part of. I'll prep the criminal referral package and have it ready for the district attorney. You get me the footage. I drove straight from Diana's office to a surveillance equipment store in Falls Church. I bought 2 4K pinhole cameras, a wireless audio recorder, and a GPS-enabled body camera the size of a shirt button. Total cost, $1.00. Best money I ever spent. Then I went home and did the thing I actually enjoyed. I sat down at my computer and built a document. It looked exactly like a legitimate estate settlement agreement. Same letterhead as Mr. Langston's firm. Same formatting. Same legal language. But buried in paragraph 14, subclause C, in font so small you'd need a magnifying glass to read it, was a sentence that said, "By signing below, the undersigned acknowledges that all prior filings related to the estate of Vivian Marie Dalton, including, but not limited to any power of attorney or deed transfer documents submitted to the county recorder, were prepared and submitted without the knowledge or consent of the executor and constitute fraudulent instrument." They wouldn't read it. People like Catherine and Richard never read the fine print. They just sign wherever there's a line and a dollar sign. I packed my bag. 2 cameras, 1 audio recorder, 1 body cam, 1 laptop, 1 fake settlement agreement, and 1 folder of genuine estate documents that proved every penny belonged to me. I drove south. The Outer Banks house sat on a stretch of sand in Kill Devil Hills, 3 blocks from the ocean. Grandma Vivian had bought it in 1987 for $95,000. Now it was worth 12 times that. It was a simple place. Cedar shingles weathered silver by salt air, a wraparound porch with rocking chairs, and a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon. It was the only place in the world where I had ever felt completely safe. When I pulled into the driveway on Friday morning, 2 hours early, the first thing I noticed was Richard's black Escalade already parked there. They were early too. That meant they were setting up. I sat in my car for 5 minutes breathing. Then I went inside. Catherine was in the kitchen, arranging a cheese board that she'd clearly bought from Harris Teeter 20 minutes ago. She was wearing a cream blazer and pearl earrings, her I'm a reasonable person costume. Richard was sitting at the dining room table, spreading papers across the surface. He was a big man, ex-Marine, with a crew cut and hands like catcher's mitts. He didn't look up when I walked in. Brooke was on the porch, talking on her phone. Through the window, I could hear fragments. By Monday, I promise. Once the deed clears, we can list it immediately. My realtor says we can get 1.3, maybe 1.4 if we stage it. She was already selling my grandmother's house, the house where Vivian taught me to make peach cobbler, the house where I spent every summer reading on the porch while the ocean roared. Brooke was dividing it up like a carcass. I set my bag down in the hallway and casually placed 1 camera on the bookshelf facing the dining room table. It looked like a decorative USB charger. I stuck the second one on the kitchen windowsill, angled toward the living room. I clipped the body cam to the inside of my cardigan. I pressed record on all 3. Elena! Catherine swept toward me, arms wide. She hugged me for the first time in 2 years. She smelled like Chanel No. 5 and desperation. You look thin. Are you eating enough? I'm fine, Catherine. Don't call me Catherine. I'm your mother. Where's Mr. Langston? I asked, scanning the room. Oh, Catherine waved her hand. He sent the documents ahead. Said he trusts us to handle the signatures ourselves. He'll file everything Monday. There it was. The first lie, caught on 3 cameras. Richard finally looked up. Sit down, Elena. Let's get this done. I sat. Brooke came in from the porch, dropping into the chair across from me. She was wearing a sundress and sandals, like she was headed to brunch, not a felony. She looked me up and down. You drove all the way from Virginia in that? She said, gesturing at my jeans and cardigan. You look like a librarian. Hello, Brooke. Nice to see you too. Let's not waste time, Richard said. He pushed a stack of papers toward me. These are the settlement documents. Catherine and I have reviewed them with our attorney. Everything's straightforward. You sign as executor, we all sign as beneficiaries, and the estate gets divided equally, 1/3 each. You, Catherine, and Brooke. I picked up the documents and flipped through them. They were professionally done, I'll give them that. Someone had paid good money for a convincing forgery. The letterhead was almost perfect. Almost, Mr. Langston's firm used Garamond font for their headers. These were in Garamond Premiere Pro. Close, but not the same. This says equal thirds, I said. That's right. Catherine sat down, folding her hands. Fair and square, just like Grandma would have wanted. Grandma's will says everything goes to me, I said quietly. The room went cold. Richard leaned forward. Wills can be contested, Elena, and they frequently are. We've already spoken to a judge who's sympathetic to our position. If you force this into probate litigation, it could take 3 years and cost more in legal fees than the estate is worth. Nobody wins. Or, Catherine added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, you can sign these papers right now. We split everything 3 ways, and we all walk out of here as a family. No lawyers. No courts. No drama. And if I don't sign? Richard stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He was 6'3" and 240 pounds. And when he stood up in a room, the room got smaller. Then we file the power of attorney we already have, he said. And we transfer the deed without you. What power of attorney? He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. He held it up so I could see it. My name. My signature. Notarized and stamped. I didn't sign that, I said. Prove it. Richard set it on the table. By the time you hire a handwriting expert and file a challenge, the house will be sold. The money will be in 3 accounts in 3 different states, and you'll be sitting in a courtroom arguing over ashes. Catherine put her hand on mine. Her fingers were ice cold. Don't make this hard, Elena. It doesn't have to be hard. Just sign. Brooke was grinning. That same grin from Nordstrom. That same grin from Grandma's kitchen table when she confessed to planting the bracelet. The grin that said I've already won, and watching you realize it is the fun part. I looked at all three of them. My mother, who chose Brooke over me every single time. My stepfather, who treated me like an inconvenience he inherited with the marriage. My half-sister, who had been stealing from me in one way or another since we were children. I let my face crumble. I let my shoulders drop. I squeezed my eyes and forced a tear down my left cheek. You're right, I whispered. I don't want to fight. I just want this to be over. Catherine squeezed my hand. That's my girl. But I'm not signing your documents, I said, reaching into my bag. I brought my own. My attorney prepared a proper settlement agreement. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. I slid my document across the table, the one with paragraph 14, subclause C, the confession buried in the fine print. Richard picked it up and flipped through it. He didn't read it. He scanned the headers, checked the signature lines, and tossed it to Catherine. She did the same. Brooke didn't even pretend. She just flipped to the last page and grabbed a pen. Wait, Richard said. He pulled the document back and stared at the header. For a horrible second, I thought he'd spotted something. My heart hammered against the body cam clipped to my cardigan. This says the executor retains the right to audit disbursements for 12 months, he said, frowning. Standard language, I said. Boilerplate. Every settlement agreement has it. It just means the IRS can't come after any of us individually if there's a discrepancy. Richard grunted. He didn't understand it. He just didn't want to look stupid. He signed. Catherine signed. Brooke signed with a flourish, dotting the I in her name with a tiny heart. At 30 years old. I signed last. My hand was steady. Now, Richard said, sliding the forged power of attorney toward me. Sign this too. Belt and suspenders. I'm not signing a power of attorney. Elena. His voice dropped. Warning. I don't need to. We just signed a settlement agreement. The POA is redundant. Sign it anyway. No. Richard stood up again. This time he walked to the front door and locked it. He put the key in his pocket. The same move. The same play. Lock the door, trap the target, apply pressure until they break. We're not leaving until every document is signed, he said. I looked at Catherine. She was nodding, just like she nodded when I was 16 and she decided I was the one who would take the fall. I looked at Brooke. She was already texting her realtor. Fine, I said, standing up. But before I sign anything else, I want you all to understand something. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were 3 documents. I laid them on the table one by one. Document 1. A certified copy of Grandma Vivian's will, filed with the Dare County Probate Court, naming me as sole beneficiary and executor, uncontested, legally binding. Richard's jaw tightened. Document 2. The original deed to this house, recorded in my name 6 weeks ago, per the terms of the will. This property belongs to me. It has belonged to me since the moment Grandma died. You are guests in my house. Catherine's face went white. Document 3. I held it up so they could all see it. A printout from the Dare County Recorder's Office showing a fraudulent deed transfer filed 4 days ago by Richard Hale, using a forged power of attorney bearing my signature. Filing a forged instrument with a county recorder is a Class H felony in North Carolina. Forgery of a legal document is a Class G felony. And attempting to use fraud to seize real property is a Class F felony. That's 3 felonies, Richard. For you. And accessory charges for anyone who helped plan it. Brooke stopped texting. And that settlement agreement you all just signed? I said, keeping my voice level. Paragraph 14, subclause C. Read it. Catherine grabbed the document and flipped to page 6. Her eyes scanned the text. I watched the exact moment she found it. Her pupils dilated. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. You just signed a written acknowledgement that the power of attorney and deed transfer were fraudulent and were filed without my knowledge or consent, in your own handwriting. With today's date. That's not legally binding, Richard snarled. We didn't know what we were signing. That's entrapment. It's not entrapment. I'm not a police officer. And you did sign voluntarily, in the presence of 3 recording devices. I pointed at the bookshelf, the windowsill, and the button on my cardigan, 2 cameras and a body cam. Everything you've said in this room for the past 45 minutes has been recorded in high definition. The forged POA, the threats, the locked door, all of it. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. I'm the consenting party. You planned this, Catherine breathed. You planned it first, I said. I just planned it better. Richard lunged for the bookshelf camera. I stepped between him and the shelf. I wouldn't, I said. The feed is live. It's streaming to a cloud server and to the office of Diana Chu, my attorney, who is currently on the phone with the Dare County District Attorney. If the feed cuts out, they'll treat it as evidence of tampering and add obstruction charges. Richard's hand froze in midair. His face cycled through fury, disbelief, and finally something I'd never seen from him before. Fear. Catherine was gripping the table. Elena, we can work this out. We're family. We can sit down and discuss this like adults. We are discussing it like adults. That's the problem, isn't it? You were counting on me being the child. Brooke stood up so fast her chair fell backward. This is insane. You set us up. You're a psychopath. I'm a cybersecurity analyst, I said. I find vulnerabilities for a living. You were the vulnerability. Brooke grabbed her phone and dialed. I'm calling my lawyer. I'd recommend it, I said. You're going to need one. The siren started 4 minutes later. 2 Dare County Sheriff's cruisers pulled into the driveway, followed by an unmarked sedan. I unlocked the front door with my own key, the one Grandma Vivian gave me when I was 12, and let them in. Deputy Morales was the first through the door. He was calm, professional, and clearly briefed. He looked at Richard. Bess. Richard didn't resist. He stood very still, his face the color of cement, and let them cuff him. Catherine started crying. Not the calculated tears she used on me. Real tears. Messy, ugly tears that ruined her mascara and made her look, for the first time in my life, like someone who had lost control of a situation. Elena, please, she sobbed. Don't do this. I'm your mother. You were never my mother, I said. You were my sister's publicist. They put her in the back of the second cruiser. Accessory to fraud. Conspiracy. They would add more charges later, after they reviewed the footage and the financial records. Brooke was last. She stood on the porch, trembling, her sundress wrinkled, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. You can't do this to me, she said. I didn't forge anything. I didn't file anything. I was just here. You were here to collect your share of stolen property, I said. That's enough. Deputy Morales read her the rights. As he walked her to the car, she turned back to me, and for a split second, the mask dropped. She didn't look angry. She looked exactly the way I looked at 16, standing in the Nordstrom security office, watching the world fall apart. You planted this, she whispered, just like I planted the bracelet. The difference, I said, is that you planted evidence of a crime I didn't commit. I planted an opportunity for you to commit a crime you were already planning. She didn't say anything after that. The trial was 4 months later. Richard pled guilty to 2 felony counts of forgery and 1 count of filing a fraudulent instrument. He got 18 months in state prison and 5 years probation. Catherine pled no contest to conspiracy to commit fraud. The judge gave her 12 months, suspended to 6 with good behavior and mandatory community service. The irony of Catherine picking up trash on the side of Highway 12 was not lost on me. Brooke's case was more complicated. Her attorney argued she was a passive participant, that she had no knowledge of the forged documents, and that she was manipulated by her parents. The jury didn't buy it. The text messages between her and Richard planning the entire scheme were recovered from her phone. She got 14 months. On the day of Brooke's sentencing, Catherine's lawyer sent me a letter. It was handwritten, on cream stationery, in Catherine's careful cursive. I knew what it would say before I opened it. It would say she was sorry. It would say she was sick. It would say Brooke was fragile. It would ask for mercy or money or both. It would be warm and sweet and designed to cost me something. I set it on the kitchen counter at Grandma Vivian's house. I made a cup of tea in one of Vivian's ceramic mugs, the blue one with the chipped handle that she refused to throw away. I sat on the porch and watched the ocean turn gold in the late afternoon light. Then I went inside, picked up the letter, and dropped it into the fireplace without opening it. The paper caught quickly, curling into ash. The house is mine now. I repainted the shutters the same seafoam green that Grandma chose in 1987. I replaced the rocking chairs on the porch. I planted a garden in the backyard, tomatoes and herbs and sunflowers, because Vivian always said a house without a garden was just a building. Some mornings I sit on the porch with my coffee and feel something that might be guilt, not for what I did, for how easy it was, for how quickly they walked into a trap that I built in a single afternoon, for how predictable they were. They spent my entire life underestimating me, and in the end, that was the only weapon I needed. My phone rings sometimes. Unknown numbers. Brooke's friends, maybe? Catherine's church group. People who heard the story secondhand and want to tell me that family is family, that blood is thicker than water, that I should forgive. He let it ring. The full saying, the one people always misquote, is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the bonds you choose are stronger than the ones you're born into. Grandma Vivian taught me that. I chose the covenant. I chose myself. And the porch is quiet now. The ocean is loud. The tea is warm. And for the first time in my life, no one is asking me to sacrifice anything.